Number 38 in Rhino. My name is Sean Drotar. Arif Dean with me on my left. And thanks for watching the pregame today. We're down to number 38 in Rhino for our latest watch party in the Avalanche Cup Quest. The Avalanche and the Stars getting going in game one. And Arif, this is an interesting matchup between these teams. They were pretty evenly matched in the 4 games they've played this regular season. The Avs did come away with 3 of the wins. Georgiev and net for all of them. But the post-trade game, obviously, for these two teams, may be the one the most interesting. And both of these teams making moves at the deadline that changed the construction of their team and the way they've played. So post-trade deadline, when you think of the addition of Tanev, in particular for the Stars, when you think about a Middlestat, among others, for the Avs, how have these teams altered the way they've played in the latter part of the season that we didn't see in the earlier part?
I would actually include Logan Stankoven as one of those additions for the Dallas Stars, coming in late in the season and already on the top line with Jason Robertson and Lupe Hintz. The Avalanche, look, we know this already. We knew this in the Winnipeg series. The Avalanche went through a trade deadline and even, let's say, calendar year 2024 makeover, because you want to include Zach Parise in there, even Chris Wagner, who tore his Achilles at training camp before training camp, and didn't really join the team until February. There's a lot of changes in the Avalanche lineup. They went over a massive overhaul. They did something the Stars haven't done yet, and that's remove players from the team as well. And the likes of Bowen Byram, obviously Ryan Johansson, guys like that. So I think the Dallas Stars were more of a finished product that just needed to make a change around the edges here and there, bringing up the young kid in Stankoven, bringing in Chris Tanev. But it's so hard, just like the Winnipeg series, to use like you said, the regular season series, because that Avalanche team was so different. And, Winnipeg smoked the Avs in the regular season. Now with Dallas, we're talking about an Avalanche team that erased a 3-0 deficit on the road and won 6-3. They did something similar at Ball Arena. I think they erased a 3-goal deficit. It was 4-1 or 4-2. They came back and won that game. I'm trying to remember that game. It's not coming to me, but that was a different team. That was a Ryan Johansson team, a Thomas Tatar team, a Bowen Byram team. So it's hard to take the regular season series into account as much as just what we saw in the first round. That's ultimately what we can base it off of now, because those are the two teams, the style of play, the momentum, the motivation, the confidence. That's what you're carrying into this game one tonight.
Obviously, it's a big opportunity for the Avalanche on the road. If you can win either of the first 2, you essentially claim home ice advantage. And the Avs have a remarkable advantage in rest. Now, the funny thing is, this is the old argument, right? Is it momentum? Is it the way? Is it health? What are these battles? The Avs have not played since April 30th. They've basically been off for a week. The last time the Stars even had 2 days off in a row was between Game 2 and Game 3 of their series with Vegas. So the rest of this series will be game, off night, game, whether it's travel or no.
Yeah.
So Dallas is already put kind of behind the 8 ball here because it took them 7 games to knock off the Golden Knights. The Avs have been lying in wait. Obviously, they have injuries that they're trying to deal with. None of those players who were injured, Duran, Kiviranta, expected to play tonight. But the rest matters, especially for a team that thrives with speed like the Avalanche does on its top end. How much can the Avs leverage that in this particular game, given after a 7-game series with the Golden Knights that was reasonably physical, only 1 night off for them? Do the Avs have the opportunity to kind of blow the doors off early if they get out and skate?
They can, and that's what they did in 2021 when they went into the second round after pretty much 8 or 9 days off after sweeping the St. Louis Blues, going up against the Vegas Golden Knights team that went 7 games and had to play 2 nights later. They absolutely can. Granted, we saw Boston win a Game 7 on Saturday, go into Florida 2 days later on Monday, and smash the Panthers 5-1, and the Panthers won their series like the Avalanche in 5 games. So there's no real method to the madness, no pattern, but the way that I can see it helping the Avalanche most, it's not necessarily Game 1. The Stars might come out and win this thing 4-2.
Right.
But the longer the series goes, the more you're going to start to realize how much more banged up the Stars are and how much that could factor into everything.
Yeah, fatigue is cumulative. Obviously,
Yes.
it never really gets better until you get the opportunity to rest, generally until even the postseason hits, and nobody wants that to happen anytime soon. But the Avs, virtue of their 5-game win over Winnipeg, earned that week off, and certainly for their top-tier guys, it helps. What the Avs were able to do after that first opening game, in which it seemed disastrous for the Avs, and they lost 7-6 to Winnipeg. The difference, though, is maybe got lost in the shuffle, that things weren't as bad as you might think, because in that game one loss, even though defensively they were bad, they scored 6 goals on the likely Vezina winner in Connor Hellebuck. That continued. The Avs never scored fewer than 5 in any of the games in that series. So how much of that was inconsistent play by Winnipeg, a speed difference by Winnipeg, a subpar series in the playoffs from Hellebuck, which he has had before?
Yeah.
Or how much of this was the Avs just kind of getting right and turning into the hot team at the right time?
It's a little bit of both. That's the best way that I see it. I've seen a lot of people resorting to Winnipeg's quote-unquote reputation from last year of winning game one and then losing 4 straight to the Golden Knights. I've seen a lot of people referring to that more so than referring to the fact that the Avalanche are an incredible team. The reality is it is a combination of both. It's a combination of the Winnipeg Jets just were not prepared for what the Avalanche were going to throw at them, and alternatively, the Avalanche are an incredible team in the playoffs when they have the depth, which they did not have last year, but they had the year before when they won the Cup in 20 games. So I think going into this series, it's kind of weird to see kind of the national, opinion about the series, like the Winnipeg series, is that the Avalanche are the underdogs.
Mm-hmm.
They were technically in Vegas the slight favorites against the Winnipeg Jets, but a lot of people were taking Winnipeg, and I don't blame them the way the season ended for the Avs. But as soon as game one went the way it did, I had a sense the Avalanche were righting the ship. They were flipping a switch right in time for the playoffs. Same thing in this series. People are looking at the Dallas Stars, 4 lines deep. Matt Duchene's on their 3rd line. Tyler Sagan's on their 3rd line. The Avalanche might have Chris Wagner on their 3rd line today, but they don't care because their top-end talent is scoring. Their defense is pitching in. Josh Manson's got 5 points in 5 games.
Right.
He's got 16 career playoff points. Nearly a third of them are in that Winnipeg series in 5 games.
Well, about the talent there with Wyatt Johnston, who 32 goals in his 2nd season, looks like a really promising top-end tier player for them. But that's not how Dallas gets it done. They don't have even a single point per game guy. The Avs have 3, in Cale Makar and Mikko Rantanen, and in Nathan MacKinnon, who broke the combined Avalanche Nordiques record for points.
And Val just missed it. Val was just off.
Just missed it. So now you're talking about a team which they have none of those guys, yet they were still in the top 5 in scoring all year long, because they do have it's not even 1, 2, it's multiple 20-goal scorers. So they have guys that can get it done on a lot of different levels. You talk about Duchene being on the 3rd line. That's part of it. This is a team that goes after you and rolls line after line. 8 20-goal scorers.
Yep.
10 players with 47 or more points. They have guys that contribute up and down the lineup. There isn't necessarily a way to stack it like teams do to try to stop the top line of the Avs, because all of their lines can hurt you, and they have more scoring ability on the defensive side of the game than a lot of people think. It's not the Avs, but it's not nothing either.
I love that kid Thomas Hartley they have on their D. He's a young kid. He had 15 goals this year and 47 points. He's one of the guys that I don't think we talk about enough as a 22-year-old that had just a spectacular season in his first full year with the Dallas Stars. And then they added Chris Tanev.
Right.
There's a couple of storylines in this. They obviously also have Ryan Suter on the 3rd pair doing the Jack Johnson duty of being the veteran. Granted, Ryan Suter is giving you a lot more minutes than Jack Johnson right now. So it is a team that whenever people talk about the Dallas Stars, it's 1 to 20, all 20 skaters. They are the deepest team in the NHL. Will you take number 1 on the Avalanche before you take number 1 on the Dallas Stars? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You'll take McKinnon over Robertson. You'll take Mikko over Rupe Hintz or whatever. You'll take Val Nichushkin, Wyatt Johnston. Now it starts to get a little more competitive, but then you get lower in the lineup and it's Yoel Kiviranta, Chris Wagner versus Matt Duchene or Tyler Sagan, and that's when you start to see the depth. The Thomas Harleys, and then they added Chris Tanev to this lineup. So that's when you start to see that the Dallas Stars, they have Nils Lundkvist on their D pair as well, but he plays a few minutes because Yanni Hakanpää's hurt. So once he's healthy, he'll be back in, which won't be this game. But you start to see that the Dallas Stars can beat you by rolling the lines. But what I love about what the Avalanche did in that first round is they don't need the sexy names. Andrew Cogliano was doing his thing. Yakov Trenin was doing his thing.
Right.
Cogliano with 3 points in 5 games.
Mhm.
Yakov Trenin had 2 goals in that series as well. So you're starting to see the Avalanche roll those lines, and there's no doubt in my mind they're going to be confident doing that here as well.
Actually, when you look at the goals expected per 60 minutes, the Avalanche's third line in that series against Winnipeg actually exceeded the expected goals per 60 minutes of their top line. So, I mean, you're talking about the ability to score on multiple lines, to roll multiple lines like Dallas does. And the advantage for the Avs conceivably is the fact that as long as you're matching them line for line, your top line is likely to come through in a way that Dallas can't match, especially given the fact, and you can't count on it continuing. Rupa Hintz, who's been a Avs killer in the past, is off to a really bad start. Just didn't have a great playoff series against the Knights. Joe Pavelski at 40 might be finally a guy that maybe more of an Avs killer than anyone in the history of the Avalanche is Joe Pavelski. And Pavelski may finally be having Father Time catch up with him a little bit as well. So they have some guys that have not hit all their marks, and that contributed, I think, to this being a 7-game series, because obviously Dallas, with the very top spot in the West, was taking on the defending champs in the Golden Knights, but they were the last team to qualify in the West. And it took them 7 games, and these teams combined for 32 goals, 16 apiece for Dallas and for Vegas. And obviously, you think about that final game 7, the deciding goal kind of was a fluky one that bounced off a player's ankle and kind of ricocheted into the net, where Aiden Hill actually had the short side covered. So a little bit of luck comes that way as well. But the Avs scored 28 goals in 5 games.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably not sustainable when you think about it, but at the same time, while Ottinger's a good goaltender, he's not Hellebuck. So why would the Avalanche be unable to score at somewhere near that pace, let's say instead of 5 a game plus, but 4 a game plus against Dallas? Is there a reason to believe that's too much to ask?
Dallas is a deeper team, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happens. I mean, it's simple as that. What I love,
Winnipeg gave up the fewest goals in the league in the regular season.
Exactly. And this goes back to the thing where people are not giving the Avalanche enough credit for what they did. There's a lot more of Winnipeg pissed it away than there is the Avalanche.
They lost 4-1.
Them. Yeah, they smoked them.
He got boat raced after the first game.
And people say, 28 goals, 4 of them were empty netters. I look at that and say, all right, so even when Winnipeg pulled their goalie, the Avalanche still put the foot on the gas and scored an empty net goal in every single game they won.
Right.
So, and then obviously 24 goals on Hellebuck in 5 games, still pretty dang good.
Really good.
What I love about the way the Avalanche structured their team going from 22 to 23 to this season. In 2022, the Avalanche's top guys, Mikko and Nate, were playing around 20 minutes a night. Gabe Landeskog's playing around 20 minutes a night. Nazem Kadri's around 19 minutes a night. Val's was a little bit behind. Berkey's at 16. Lekkonen's not far behind. It was a lot more of, spread the wealth, spread the time on ice. Now, the Avalanche don't do that. They were able to add the pieces they need. Casey Middlestat, second-line center. Val came back healthy. Lekkonen came back healthy. I mentioned this with you and Sandy on your radio show the other day. They got all the ifs and ifs and ifs have all lined up where they have help. They have a 4th-line center in Yakov Trenin that I absolutely adore his game. Just a wonderful guy to have on there.
Physicality, a lot of physical play, got a little bit of touch. This guy's a former 20-goal scorer. He can put it in the net.
He's got the intimidating playoff look. He does it all.
A good addition.
Even with those additions that they've made, as compared to what we've seen since the Cup final, no depth, and the Rodriguez and the Comfort and the Johansson, we don't know who's on the second line, what the third line is, like all this junk that's been happening since the Cup final. The Avalanche finally got the depth pieces to do that, but their ice time is not. They haven't gone back to spreading the ice time. Middlestat isn't playing Kadri numbers.
No.
So Middlestat's playing 14, 15 minutes a night. And in those 14, 15 minutes a night, he's beating the competition. Nathan MacKinnon, 22, 23. And in those 22, 23, he's beating the competition. The Dallas Stars, on the other hand, their top forward in ice time per game was Jason Robertson. He played 18 minutes a game. Rupe Hintz, 17. Wyatt Johnson, 17. So when you line it up line by line, yeah, sure, the 3rd and the 4th line are going to take on the Avalanche's 3rd and 4th line and maybe beat them on specific nights. I don't think it'll happen every night.
I don't either, but yeah, from time to time it will.
But the reality is, if your top line is playing 17 or 18 minutes and the Avalanche's top line is playing 22 or 23, there's a 6-minute discrepancy there where MacKinnon, Mikko, and Nate are going against your lower competition.
Yeah, and that ends up being, think about it, roughly 10 shifts, give or take, extra in which those guys can do some damage. And I think the ability for the Avs now that they've switched things up, and really when you look at the way this team has been rolling, the part that I like about it, Eric, is that virtually nobody, I think, underachieved. Maybe Sean Walker wasn't as good as you had hoped, but I thought despite the fact he didn't score, I thought Brandon Duhaime was pretty good. I thought Jack Johnson was pretty good. I mean, maybe you're picking on Sean Walker, but you go up and down the lineup, there wasn't a skater that I looked at and said, they really need more from player X. Everyone was doing what they were expected to do, and that included turning around the defense. And that's the part I think we want to talk about. We know about the scoring that the Avs can do. We know about, you explained Manson's 5 points already. Sam Girard came back after the concussion and looked very, very sharp. But my worry, obviously, is you don't want to turn this into a goaltender battle. Not that Alexander Georgiev has played poorly since that first game. In fact, he's played very well. Goals against have been great. Save percentage has been 93% since the first game. But ideally, the Avs don't have to just lean on Georgiev. What you saw against Winnipeg might not be sustainable against Dallas, and that's the limiting the shots. Now, obviously, if you can keep a team between 20 and 25 shots, I feel the Avs probably win that game the vast majority of the time. If it's between 25 and 30 shots, I think the Avs probably have a puncher's chance in those games. May not be in the best spot, but they'll be all right. If they surrender more than 30 shots on goal, it seems, in games, that's when you're really getting in the danger zone. And especially against a guy that Ottinger, that in the third period in overtime, against, again, the defending champs, gave up 1 goal. So the Avs really do have to focus again on limiting the shots. They made some of those mistakes in the early going, especially in the Game 1 loss. They overcame some in the Game 2 win. But how do they make sure that they focus, especially where you're talking about the goal mouth situation where the Avs tend not to do a lot of bullying and pushing guys away from the corners of the net, where a lot of the time, not only in the postseason, but in the regular season, people were able to get them past Georgiev by standing on those sides, and the Avs have not been as diligent as they could be in cleaning those guys off.
I think the biggest thing with that is Winnipeg just didn't do a great job of taking it to the crease the way that we expect the Dallas Stars to. So it's hard to really comment on what the Avalanche's the playoff rendition of this Avalanche team. Okay, let me just say this as I continue that comment, because this is related to it. I hated for years when the Avalanche were still that inexperienced team trying to make the playoffs, and then eventually made the playoffs in the Jared Bednar era, and then eventually started winning series and eventually won the cup. I hated always hearing whenever the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Pittsburgh Penguins, this team, that team, whenever they were a lower seeded team, the storyline of that's when the playoffs come around, they're going to turn it on because they know how to play in the playoffs. And I'm like, this, that general, I hate it.
That's not a thing. You think it's a thing? Go check with the Denver Nuggets. It's not a thing.
Yeah. So it's not a thing.
Sometimes you reach out and flip the switch and the light doesn't come on.
Yeah.
Okay?
So it's not always a thing. But what I hate is it's absolutely a thing with the Avalanche this year, because we saw how they ended the regular season. It's not always a thing. We saw the Vegas Golden Knights won the cup. They thought, guys are going to get healthy. We're going to beat the Dallas Stars. They waited 7 games. Impressive. They were outplayed 6.5 of those 7 games.
Yeah.
The Dallas Stars were the better team. Had Vegas won that Game 7, the Avalanche would have been given a gift. Not just home ice advantage, but a far less superior competition in the Vegas Golden Knights. So I always hated hearing that narrative. And now I think back to it and I'm like, that's literally what the Avalanche are right now this year.
It is, but at the same time, some of this is also the idea that a couple of things can be true at the same time. And I'm Sean Drotar, SDROTAR on Twitter. This is Arif Dean. You can follow him on Twitter, Run Right Arif. That's AARIF, our lead Avalanche writer and the Hockey Mountain High podcast host at Mile High Sports. I'm on every afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. with my partner, Sandy Clough, on Mile High Sports Radio. The idea that this team took a while, maybe, it takes a while to gel too. You have to get everyone used to where they're going to be. You have to make sure that everyone's comfortable with where they sit on the lines. You have to be used to their line mates. Some of this also looked to me like it was less about, it's the playoffs, we'll turn it on, and more about they've finally gotten enough time to get used to one another and trust one another, and it sort of fortuitously just synced up with this playoff series.
That's what you hope it does. I asked Jared about Casey Middlestat late in the regular season, right before the season finale against the Oilers. And if you remember when Middlestat came in, he had 0 points in that first game when he flew in for the Minnesota game, no practice. And then the next 5 games, 5-game point streak, then he went into a little bit of a lull. You kind of noticed him some games, you kind of didn't. And then the playoffs began, and I'm surprised with his physicality. I'm surprised with how he's fighting in the corners. He's got a reputation of being a guy that stays on the perimeter and doesn't get into the physical part of the game. And this is his first taste of the playoffs, and I'm surprised at that. I'm seeing his creativity kind of just like come to light.
I'm glad you brought that up.
The 5 assists in the last 3 games of the first round series, the way he was moving the puck, very Alex Tanguay-esque in his creativity with playmaking. But this is still a guy playing 15 minutes a night, and it just seemed like you said, he was trying to figure it out, got to the playoffs, figured it out.
Yeah,
got to the playoffs, figured it out,
and then knows where his guys are. And you saw Middlestat be more aggressive and do what you'd like to see a lot of guys do. You know, taking it right at the net, but then looking for guys to pass it to. And he is a precise passer. He really is a very gifted and creative passer. And I think we saw that in the 5 assists in that first round. And even one of the assists he had ended up basically being a goal where it ended up being a deflection. But when you actually go look at it, when he was down on the coming down the right side, sent a pass across the crease, but it turned out to be really a shot.
Yeah,
because it looked originally like a shot that he might have been doing, but the shot would have missed the net. He actually intended to basically carry it off of a teammate's stick directly into the net. That's exactly what happened. Almost like a fancy shot at the pool, at a pool table. Middlestat can do that and do that on the fly. That's a good sign, and it's why the Avs were willing to trade a potentially phenomenal player in Bowen Byram in order to get him in an old-fashioned, 1-for-1 trade. I do want to touch upon this a little bit. Matt Duchene, of course, is a part of the Stars. He's been an effective player. He's had a very, very good career. Back in 2017, the Avs moved on from him.
Yeah.
It is fascinating that 3 players on this Avalanche roster, all those years later, came directly from that trade. Because obviously you have Samuel Girard, who was in the trade initially from Nashville.
Yep.
He ends up there. 2 of the picks, one of them ended up being Shane Bowers. That didn't work out. One of the other ones, the Avs traded down a couple spots. They picked Justus Annunen, now their backup goaltender. And in one of the other selections, of course, the high one, they picked Bowen Byram, who was immediately traded this year, 1-for-1 with Middlestat.
You got your second line center from Matt Duchene.
Your second line center, depending on your second pair defenseman, and your backup goaltender all came from Matt Duchene on this team. And the amazing thing about that is even given Girard being on this team for a while, all 3 of those guys are young.
Yeah. Sam Girard, it blows me away. I think he's 25.
Mm-hmm.
He's been here for forever.
Yeah, people forget that they got him. He was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, and he came in right away, and he met the team in Sweden and took on the Ottawa Senators and Matt Duchene, that whole thing. He was so young. Eric Johnson was a top pair defenseman when Sam Girard came in and played with him. Like, it's been a very long time that he's been here, and he's still only 25. The thing with Matt Duchene is I think him in the playoffs. So one of my favorite quotes, not the best GM, but he's got a great quote. Marc Bergevin, who used to be the GM of the Montreal Canadiens, former NHLer. Now he works, I think, in the LA Kings organization. He used to say there are players that get you there and players that get you through.
Right.
With the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto Maple Leafs have a lot of players that get you there. They're trying to find out. They're trying to filter through them right now and find out which are the ones that are going to get you through so they can trade the other ones.
Multiple decade-long process. But yes, they're working on it.
Yeah, but in this core, the Avalanche had a lot of guys that can get you there. And I think from that older version of the core, Paul Stastny was kind of a guy that can get you through, but really the only one, and you can notice it before he got traded, was Ryan O'Reilly was a guy that can get you through.
Mm-hmm.
This era of the Avalanche, Nathan MacKinnon, get you there, get you through. Mikko Rantanen, the stats that he has in the playoffs, Nathan MacKinnon's stats he has in the playoffs, they're like top 5 in points per game in history with like Gretzky and McDavid and
that's ridiculous.
And Lemieux, like they're up there. Gabe Landeskog amps his game up in the playoffs. Even Zach Parise amps his game up in the playoffs. Casey Middlestat was a guy that I was worried about. Is he going to be a guy that gets you through, or is he going to be like I was talking about earlier, a perimeter player that's not up to the test with playoff hockey? In the first 5 games, very tiny sample size, looking pretty dang good. Matt Duchene strikes me as a guy that can get you there. The getting you through part is the part that's going to be tough with him. He didn't have a single goal with the Avalanche in the playoffs. He played a 6-game series against the San Jose Sharks, and then he played in the Minnesota series, but was injured a little bit. I think for the first 2 or 3 games. He didn't have a single goal in that in his career in the playoffs with the Avalanche. With the Columbus Blue Jackets, when they went on that crazy run and swept the Lightning and then took the Bruins to 6 games in 2019, he had 5 goals and 5 assists. Contract year, 5-5 in 10 games. That's about the only year he had a great playoff season. 2 years ago was his last playoff appearance. He He had 4 points in 4 games with 3 goals, and the Avalanche swept them 4-0 in the series. And now in this 7-game series with the Dallas Stars against the Vegas Golden Knights, 1 goal, 1 assist, not a whole lot going on. Both of his points were at the power play, no even strength points. So he's a third-line guy, but he's not necessarily, to me, a guy that can get you through. There's a reason why he's a $3.5 million third-line guy,
right,
because the Dallas Stars can use his 65 points in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he's going to go lower down the depth chart. He's going to give you 16 minutes a night. So,
in which he has 1 goal and 1 assist at the age of 33.
Yes, and they're both on the power play. No game-winning goals, only 10 shots in 7 games. And he's going to be going up if Bednar does the Bednar thing of I'm confident enough to just line match. He's going to go up against Ross Colton, and that's a guy that doesn't necessarily get you there. He's going to give you 35 to 45 points a year, but in the playoffs, he turns into a beast.
Well, and there was a worry, I think, with Colton that wasn't going to be the case, because I think out of all of the Avalanche's addition in the offseason, Colton might have been the one that I think was the felt like the layup, right? Like, this can't go wrong. He's 26. He's in his prime. We know he's been clutch. He's
history.
Yeah, he's already scored
experience.
A Stanley Cup clinching goal.
Crazy.
And you think that's good to go. But I think that in the regular season, there was probably not a single Avalanche player that was a bigger disappointment than Ross Colton. And it's not as if Colton went, berserk in this first round, but I thought he played well. I thought he was consistent. He had a goal. He had 2 assists, anchored that kind of third line. Again, a line in which Miles Wood played well. And then the other remarkable part of that line is they've had to switch. Sometimes it was Kiviranta, then Nikolai Kovalenko. Kiviranta was a perfect fit with those guys.
Was incredible.
They'd love to get him back. Kovalenko, they're apparently not going to go with Kovalenko, though I thought he was just fine in his first couple NHL appearances. He debuted in the playoffs, a la Cale Makar here. But they're going to go with Chris Wagner tonight, presumably. Why Wagner over Kovalenko? Is there something in Kovalenko's game you didn't see? Or is this just the fact that you're going to probably see a more experienced Dallas team and you'd like a different body in there?
That's what it's going to be. It's a more experienced Dallas team. It's also, you know what you're going to get with Chris Wagner. It's very similar to Kiviranta. It's not the sexiest name, but it's the name that's going to give you hard hockey and play a very similar style of play to Colton and Wood. And not that Kovalenko's not going to be that, but he's still a young, raw player. It kind of reminds me of when Sam Malinsky was getting called up earlier in the year. You saw a lot of skill there. You saw him doing his thing. But then you look at Jack Johnson and you look at Jared Bednar and you say, you know what you're going to get with this guy.
Right.
You know exactly what you're going to get. You know you're going to trust him.
And I love the way that Jack Johnson has played.
I feel like in the 3 years he's
so
been in the Avalanche,
reliable.
He's gotten better every season. In his limited
playoffs too.
Yeah, and I talked to him late in the regular season. Talked to him for about 20 minutes. I don't think he's ready to call it a career either. So, he might come back again. We'll see how the playoffs go, knock on wood and everything. Hope he can get another cup and go for another run with this team. So,
as on the third pair, it's gone pretty well. And he's
him and Walker fit well together.
Yeah, he's a stay-at-home defenseman. Walker has a lot of good instincts as when to jump into the play. Obviously, in his previous spot, he wasn't able to do that. So maybe one of the guys that might be able to step up that wasn't huge in the series against Winnipeg might be able to do it here. When you think about it as we get close to puck drop here, Sean Drota, RF Dean with you from Mile High Sports. For the Avalanche, when player X goes well, that means something positive for the Avalanche. Or when player X goes poorly, that's bad news. Who are those guys? Are they the same guy or are they different ones?
I'll give you one off the top of my head. It's Valeri Nichushkin.
That's got to be number one, right?
That's number one on the list.
If he's going well, the Avs are tough to beat.
The obvious answer is McKinnon, the Makar, the Rantanen, things like that. But number one for me is Valeri Nichushkin because he played the best hockey of his life in the 2022 Cup Final. He had a goal in Game 2 against Seattle, and then he disappeared, and he's got a goal in every single game against the Winnipeg Jets. Mm-hmm. That's 3 series in a row where Val Nichushkin is Val Nichushkin in the playoffs, even though he only played the 2 games in Seattle. And we saw what happened to the team as soon as he left the lineup. The other one, Alexander Georgiev. Not that you need him to beat Jake Ottinger.
Right.
You just need him to be the Darcy Kemper going up against Andrei Vasilevsky. Yep. Don't let in 7 goals on 23 shots. I mean, in any scenario,
that would be preferable, yeah.
in any scenario, don't do that. But just give your team a chance. Know that if you're going up against a goalie that has a 2.2 or whatever it is, goals against average that Jake Ottinger has, you can let in 3 goals and trust that Val Nichushkin's 7 goals and Arturi Lekkonen's 5 goals and Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar are going to save you and score 4 or 5. But you can't have those 6-3 deficits, 5-3
Right.
deficits, and expect your team to fight back again against a guy like Jake Ottinger after doing it against Connor Hellebuck. But then to go off of what you were saying, Chris Wagner is in, Kovalenko's out, so he's probably going to slot in with Wood and Colton. But again, this reminds me of what the Avalanche had when they had to use Obe Kubel and then Sturm. Sometimes Newhook was a healthy scratch, sometimes Burakovsky. Right now, the Avalanche have 12 forwards. Drouin hasn't played yet. Kiviranta's an option. Wagner's an option. Kovalenko's an option. You have depth, and you trust pretty much every single one of these guys to an extent.
And you'll notice they changed on the third line because the fourth line has been going very well, and they're not going to mess with it. I'll give you a couple different things involved with that. Obviously, you know about Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen. Also, both of these guys scored goals in each of the 5 games. First teammates to do that in Avalanche history. But I look at those two as being the key to everything. And it's the same thing, of course. You have, I think we're not taking McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar for granted. I think we're understanding that they have to be themselves. But it's a reasonable expectation they will be themselves. But to me, it is that pair, and they're not often a pair anymore, at least, of Nichushkin and of Arturi Lehkonen.
Yeah.
Because these guys play 5-on-5. They play on the power play. They play on the penalty kill. They play big minutes. They play every situation. They're absolutely critical to what the Avs need. And with Gabriel Landeskog out, they provide something that no other players on the team provide. It's one of the reasons they have the goals. Net front presence.
Yep.
That you have to have it. Nichushkin's a better fit because he's larger, but Lehkonen is scrappy enough to do it. He's got good hands, and that's a good fit for the Avalanche too. But those two guys, if they continue to play like they play, feels like the Avs have more of the horses and will be able to push this over the finish line. But we will find out tonight. You think this series goes 7?
I say 6.
6? Okay.
I got the Avs in 6. I got them winning it. I think I don't remember if I mentioned it on your radio show or Eric Goodman, but I have the Avalanche in 6 at Ball Arena because for once they're the lower seed again. Right. They can win it in 6 and not 5 or 7 at home.
I actually have the Avs in 6 as well because if it goes 7, I think that pretty heavily favors Dallas. If you're the Avs, I think you want to see if you can get this done. And the best way to do it, win tonight. Take home ice. Take it back and go ahead and start controlling that series. Give yourself a chance even to maybe go 2 up and take an early stranglehold. We'll find out what the Avalanche do in just a couple minutes. It's been fun talking with you about this. Thanks to everyone at number 38. If you haven't been down there for either one of our watch parties for the Avs or the Nuggets, you're missing out. But you can come down here any time whatsoever. All Colorado, top to bottom, all the beers, all the spirits, an incredible patio where there's a jumbotron out there literally to make sure you catch everything and easy to get to right off the highway. So come check out number 38 in Rhino. He's Arif Dean. Follow him on social at Run Right Arif. That's AARIF, host of the Hockey Mountain High podcast and our lead Avalanche writer on Mile High Sports. I'm Sean Drotar. I'll catch you tomorrow, 4 p.m. with my co-host Sandy Clough like I do every weekday. Enjoy the game. We will be back with you on Thursday to do this again for Game 2. Until then,
looking forward to it.
This is Mile High Sports.